Welcome to Masters in Travel and our Client Experience series. This month, we'll be diving into every aspect of client experience and why we think it's such an important element of your business that should not be overlooked. This is our second client experience episode, so if you haven't yet tuned in to episode 174, please go back and listen to that conversation first, as that's where Brianna and I really laid the foundation for what we'll be discussing today. In that episode, we talked about how you want clients to feel when they're working with you and what is your purpose. Aside, of course, from all the money and business stuff, we all know that we're here to earn money doing something that we love. So, aside from this, what is your purpose? Before we dive into today's client experience conversation, we'd like everyone to take a moment and mark your calendars for June 18th and 19th, when we'll be hosting Crafting Your Signature Client Experience, a masterclass for travel advisors. And we'd like to invite you to join us. The masterclass will be the same content on both days, so you can choose which day works best for you. And we'll have more details to share soon and a link to sign up. But for now, mark your calendars for June 18th and 19th, at least one of those days, to not miss out on this opportunity to dive into all things client experience together with Brianna and I. So, now that we've laid that foundation, today we are going to dive into the 5 specific areas of our business that impact the client experience. Brianna, do you want to walk us through high level these 5 areas and what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, I think that this is just a really great continuation of the conversation that we had last week because hopefully what people got from that episode is just like the importance of the client experience and how much the brand experience that we've developed is going to impact the client experience that we should be creating. And what I'd love to do next is really take people through the important work of auditing what we're doing in all elements of our business that impact the client experience. And hopefully what we've convinced you of so far is that it's so much more than like the nuts and bolts. It really is everything from the moment people know about us until like forever, hopefully, because hopefully we're
Yeah.
acquiring clients that stay our clients for life. And so the 5 areas that I've kind of like, I don't know that I came up with this. I don't want to give myself too much credit. But the 5 areas that I think really deserve a deep dive and an audit in our business are the service offerings. So this is just truly like the service suite that we provide for our clients. And for some of us, that's literally just one thing. But can we think through if one thing really serves the clients that we're hoping to serve? And does there need to be different elements where people are able to experience and connect with us and we have something to offer them that is of value? So just thinking through our service offerings and auditing that. The next thing is aesthetics. And so this is just truly thinking through how we visually present our brand and if that is aligned with the brand that we've developed and with our ideal client, which is a really, really important aspect of the client experience. Because if we're not visually like on point from the get-go, it really does impact the type of people that are going to be attracted to our business and come in the door, so to speak. And then the
Mhm.
client experience that we want to provide hasn't attracted the right type of people that are really going to find that valuable. So that's super
Right.
important. The third thing is communication. And I think we can definitely go so deep here because communication really is the foundation of so much that we do. Once a client is truly like, once we've acquired the client and through all aspects of our workflow, communication can make or break the client experience. And I think in so many ways, when people don't have a good client experience, it really can be traced back to our
Yes.
communication. And so
Yep.
auditing this part of our business is huge. I think we're going to spend a ton of time
Agreed.
unpacking that one.
Yep. Yep.
And then once we've audited that, especially the communication perspective, is going and taking a really good look at our systems. And so auditing our systems, where can we automate? Where can we streamline? Where can we really do a better job of standardizing things so that our client experience stays the same for each and every client? We want it good and then we want it to be the same. We don't want to be like some people have a great client experience because our systems, worked on that trip and then this
I
next
wasn't
trip,
too
who knows?
busy
We were
that
kind of
month.
willy-nilly it. Yeah.
Usually
And then the
is what it's
last
about.
point, right, true. The last point is auditing our client acquisition. And so, really, this has to go. This is a little bit big picture, but it really is taking a good look at how our brand and our business is positioned to attract new clients with ease. I think for most of us, and probably most people listening to this podcast, we're not done attracting new clients. We haven't said, you know what, we got our book of business and we really don't want anymore and we can't handle anymore. None of us
Right.
are hopefully at that point. So it's auditing how that looks, how we acquire new clients, and making sure that we are acquiring the right clients for the brand and the business that we've built. So those are the 5 areas that I'd love to dive into in terms of how do we audit this? What questions should we be asking ourselves? And maybe Whitney and I, we can just share kind of like when we think of these questions, what has come up for us and where are we at in our own business in terms of thinking through these, giving them some thought, and then making changes as we see fit. So did that kind
Perfect.
of like set the
Yeah.
stage for you?
Yeah. Let's go right back to the top to service offerings. So I'm curious to know, do you offer currently more than one service? Or how has this
Yeah,
evolved in your business?
yeah. I mean, I think that well, both of us here, Whitney and I, for just kind of everybody listening, and if you don't know our business or you're a new listener to the podcast, we both kind of have a similar business setup where like our main bread and butter is custom FITs, right? It's like the start to finish A to Z bookings for, complex trips, full itineraries, stuff like that. That's what we're known for, that's what we're good at. And a lot of us can relate to that, but not everybody. A lot of people can have like either, hey, I focus on cruises, I focus on destination weddings, I focus on groups or what have you. And so most of us are going to have this main service offering, this kind of like, here's what we do, here's what we're good at. I think the question that I've asked myself over the years is this one thing that I do enough to reach my ideal clients at whatever stage they're at? And so in the last couple of years, I've developed kind of a little bit more of a service suite, if you will. So I have this main like custom travel planning. That's my main thing. And that's what I would say 90% of clients come to me for. The other things that I've supplemented it with has been a VIP client. So that is kind of like the retainer model, which is super amazing for when you have clients that are going to be working with you consistently and just really want to like retain your services. And so what I've offered is a year-long plan where somebody just pays one fee and then I'll plan, their custom trips, I'll plan the weekend getaway, I'll give them some, if they're going on a family trip, but they've done an Airbnb, but they want a couple of whatever, like things set up. It's really just a more holistic approach to working with clients. And then in addition to that, kind of like this entry level for me is hotel only bookings. And it's not anything I ever talked about or said that I offered or kind of put out there. But I realized, A, it's a low hanging fruit. And it really is a way for me to add value to people who are clients and ideal clients when they are staying at luxury properties where I know like, hey, great, like I have value to add to this booking and I want to make sure that you know that this is something that I offer. So it's really just, hey, is there an opportunity to reach, like I said, again, ideal clients at a stage of business that might not be what your signature offering is? And is it clear that these are some things that you offer and that you do well and that you can provide value? I think these are some questions we can ask ourselves and making sure that they don't compete with each other. What I don't want is to have somebody be like, oh, I can just have her book hotels. I don't need a full itinerary. Like, I want it to be
Mhm.
very clear. This is good for you if you're here. You're just looking
Right.
to go to this destination for 3 nights and you want to make sure that you have VIP status, free breakfast, upgrades, blah, 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 not to take away from what I truly do and that they don't overlap in any way. So I think those are kind of like a couple of questions. Number one, is there enough opportunity for your ideal clients at whatever stage they're at to work with you? And number two, is the offerings that you have very clear? And do they not overlap or compete with each other? So yeah, that's kind of
Okay.
it for me. How about for you?
Um, so I would say that I have, like, technically, I would say yes to any of those three services as well. Like, I do mention hotel only on my website and in my email signature, but it's not something that I book frequently. It's not something that I talk about or promote. So that's something that's like in terms of like auditing our client
Mhm.
experience and making sure that clients even know that that's possible. Like that's a really big area that I can't tick off. Like that is already step number 1. That could be improved on my side. I have put together a retainer kind of guide for client, like I've had a couple clients interested in it and so I'm open to that. But do I talk about, promote, and make sure that every client knows that I have all 3 of these options? No.
Yeah.
So, technically, am I willing to work in all 3 of these ways? Yes, but I don't do a very good job. Most people know me for just custom FIT planning on a trip by trip basis. That's how they come to me. That's how we get started. And then I don't really talk about anything else that I do. So, that's definitely like an area that I think I could kind of sit with and think more about it. Um, because I think it could definitely be improved and there's definitely like potential kind of being
Yeah.
left on the
And
table, I
that's
think.
yeah, that's kind of like the thing to think through is like, is there something left on the table that like is a low cost offer, lower than kind of what your core signature service is, but that would serve people that perhaps are finding you or learning about you at different points in their journey. So it's kind of like, hey, like they were referred or they've already kind of started the process, but they're like, somebody mentioned Whitney, and it's like, hey, this could be an ideal client. But where they found me at or where they understand they're at a different point in the journey. And do I have something for them that would make sense for not only them and finding value, but also for you and your business? It's something to think about. And also, kind of something to think about. I would say the thought process is different depending on how long you're in business. What I guess I would say for newer advisors is not to try and say, here's my 7 things that people can work with me as, because that gets confusing as well. You want people to know what you are really great at and what you are hanging your hat on, so to speak. So, the caution there, I guess I would say, is when you're starting out, like figure out like what you really want people to know you for. And then as your business grows and develops, taking a look at your services and your offer suite as a whole and making sure that when you think of your ideal client, they're not getting pushed out, so to speak, if there is a way that they can work with you.
So I think that this kind of takes me back to our conversation from last week where we started talking about client experience. And I think that something else to consider is not only where are you at in your business and like start simple, full
Mhm.
stop, but then also who is your ideal target client and what are they looking for and why are they coming to you? Because sometimes more options are what people want to see because they want to be
Mhm.
able to find themselves in a certain option. But some client types or some types of people, they just want things simple and straightforward and easy.
Mhm.
And so more options might paralyze them, might
Right.
confuse them, might actually make them hop off your website and go somewhere else of like, so I think that it's also really important to connect the services that you want to be offering and not just doing what your travel advisor friend is doing because it's working for them because their clients aren't your clients and not doing what you think you should be doing but actually doing what your ideal clients are looking for.
100%. 100%. That actually, I know we have a few friends that offer kind of what would you call it? Kind of like a consultation service, right? So
Yeah.
it's like,
Mhm.
hey, these people don't want bookings done. They don't want hotels. They really just want the advice and the expertise of somebody to kind of say, is what I'm doing good? What are your thoughts on the best areas to stay in Paris? Do you have any ideas if I'm into shopping? And then, they have something where, great, you pay me this set amount, you get this many hours of my research, this a phone call, and then a follow up, and that is worth my time. And those types of people, maybe this particular trip isn't right for a full trip plan, but they think that like, you know exchange of money for time is worth it, and is a good use of their time. And then B, I'm assuming that like that particular client, while for this particular trip it might be a good fit for them to just offer the consultation services, perhaps for another type of trip they would come back and still be a client. and they know their type of client well enough to know that that is still a person that they would like to work with perhaps long term. I
Exactly.
don't think that
Exactly.
I don't offer that because I don't find it valuable to me. But I definitely see how it could be valuable when you know your ideal client and that type of person who would need that service, still wanting to kind of keep them in the fold.
You really have to know who your ideal client is, because when I think of offering this service, I don't think I feel that I have enough expertise in one specific country or one
Exactly.
specific city
Same. I'd
to
be like,
really say, sit down with me for an hour and I'm going to know everything you're going to ask me.
yeah,
And some people really do have this
they have
expertise.
that.
Like they
Yeah,
have been to a specific country or city so many times and they go there so frequently that they truly can do this. And I think that that's fabulous. My clients, or like my ideal client, is looking to not only have me advise them and to take things off their plate, but to also really find the unique and the super personalized experiences. And a lot of those types of things that my ideal clients are looking for are not going to be things that I can sit down in a consultation with you and say, just go here and figure this out yourself. That's legitimately the whole purpose of working with me as your advisor, is because a lot of things that I'm recommending or arranging for you are things that you can't do by yourself or you don't even know that you could do by yourself. And so
exactly.
there's a disconnect.
Yeah,
So for that's why there's a million things you could do out there when it comes to service offerings, or how you could work with your clients, but you have to always take it back to, does this make sense for my ideal client? Are they
hmm,
looking for this? Do they want this? Is this going to feel aligned when they hear me talk about this? Or am I actually going to push them away because they're going to think, well, Whitney's great, but that what she's talking about, that's not what I'm looking for. So like, is she still the right fit? Like you don't want to put any doubt in anyone's mind.
100%. Well, I almost forgot about this. I did something that just like I realized it was so misaligned, and so I kind of hid it after I like spent all this time creating it. And it was these like pre-done itineraries for like basically people who couldn't really afford to work with me. And so I would just
Yep.
like I'm like, I can make an itinerary for like Rome, Florence, Venice. Like I can do,
Yep.
this Bali itinerary and kind of just like put it together. I have a lot of knowledge in these destinations. I have a lot of like, here's how you could do it like DIY. Here's where you should go. Here's
Yep.
how you could, and
Yep.
then sell quote unquote the itinerary for like a low price point. I think I put it on my website for like $67. It's on my end. Like the work's already done. I know this stuff like frontwards, backwards,
Hmm.
whatever. I make it look pretty. I sell it for $67. But who am I selling that to? Like, yes, people could find it valuable. It's not, is the $67 worth kind of like the what it could look like to my ideal clients? They're coming to my website and here I'm saying I do this elevated luxury, whatever, and then I have a $67 itinerary to Bali. Like, well, why are you paying me $600 to plan your trip to Bali? Like, if you could just pay $67 right here. It just seems
So,
misaligned.
yep. Yep. So I don't know. And I've definitely thought about doing this as well. And I think a lot of travel advisors
Yeah,
have, because it's kind of like having different levels of service offerings at different price points and utilizing the knowledge and expertise that we have in a variety of different ways. So I can't, one second. So I think we've all thought about this and we've all considered doing it. And some of us have even done it and then hit it, as you mentioned. And it kind of, and I don't know that I necessarily have the answer to this, but there are many service providers who do have a service suite of
yeah,
options.
yeah,
There are graphic designers that have a DIY course
yeah.
that shows you how to do something on Canva, and then they have templates that you can, purchase and then customize, so it's kind of a semi-custom situation, and then they have like full-on custom design services. And so I'm just like right now in the moment trying to think through, it's not that you can't speak to different audiences and have different levels of offerings for different people, but what is the difference between what I've just described with a graphic designer, for example, and what we've described? Is it just that they are constantly talking about those three offerings and helping people identify which might be right for them? Or like how?
I guess it really is. You have to do the job of knowing your client segments and making sure that they know what lane they fall in. And I think that
Yeah,
that
okay.
goes back to either like making sure that number one, the offerings don't compete with one another, so that this client that really is ideal for your custom services doesn't feel like, oh, I could just like they really understand that what they're looking for and what matters to them and what they're going to value is found over here and not over here, or is simply like what they can afford at this point. And so yeah, it could for sure work, and there's something to be said to thinking through if it will work for your business. But then there's, yeah, like I couldn't find, I haven't yet found how it worked for me, and so I just did all the work and then literally hit it like 3 weeks later. I was like, I don't know, it's just
So
this shouldn't be on my website, so I'm just gonna like hide that page. And there we go, like that's where
so
I left it.
I so I don't know if this is the answer, but, like, tell me if this connects at all. If I'm a graphic designer that I have identified my ideal target client as small business owners in service-based industries. Let's just say that.
Mhm.
There are a wide variety of small business owners in service-based industries, all at varying levels of revenue and experience.
Right.
And so you could have a small business owner as a travel advisor who's just getting their business started and who is not ready to like go in full custom brand design, et cetera, et cetera. But maybe they have the revenue and the awareness of what they want their business to be to purchase a semi custom template.
Yeah.
And so it's like a financial decision. It's not like a totally different client. It's the same client
Just at a
at
different
varying
point.
levels of like what they
Yes.
can afford and invest in what they're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Whereas
actually, when I think about it, that's how like the last copywriter I used, I started off, I purchased templates and I'm like, I'm gonna DIY this ish and give me the like
yep,
the Mad Lib version that I can kind of get started with. The next time I hired her, I was like, oh, $3,000 for a day? Yes. Like I
exactly.
don't have the time to do the
S
DIY stuff, and I can
s
afford $3,000 for a day of your
Yeah.
time.
So there's it's most often and it's hopefully this is what's always happening is that small business owners in service-based industries might start with these copywriters and graphic designers at the lowest level one and over the years work their way up to the highest level one, and we are the same person.
Mhm.
We have just evolved and grown to then be able to be ready to invest in their highest level service. I think that's the disconnect with offering done for you itineraries is because and I am open for somebody to come charging into our inbox and disagree with me on this. But as I'm trying to think through who wants a custom designed itinerary and who's willing to pay 500 plus dollars for that for said itinerary, and who wants a $67 done for you itinerary is not the same client. And
Mm.
I am struggling to really see how that $67 ideal client is eventually going to graduate into the custom. It doesn't mean it's impossible,
But this is
but
this is the thought process that we have to do. This is the auditing of knowing our ideal client that is required, because there's there's a little bit of, was it cannibalization? You know how I like to make it
yeah.
work. Is it cannibalization?
Which phrase are we going to try to remember
I don't know.
today?
I don't know.
You guys, I think
We'll
we can
see.
start a game around this. Then I'm not pregnant anymore. It's going to be like, let's take a shot. Every time Brianna tries to remember a phrase.
There's something to it though, right? Like don't cannibalize your main offering if it is not going to be that same person at a different stage. What I
You
do
don't want
think
to
though,
distract people.
exactly. And I know advisors who do this, it's kind of like that upsell model as well. So like, hey, here's the basic version of what I do. Now, do you want this like add-on of the additional high touch services that is a different price point? That could definitely work for that. Like, hey, when I first worked with you, I was here and I could, this is what we could afford. No, now I do want you like doing whatever it is, all my restaurant reservations or whatever, as like an add
So,
service as well.
yeah. So I'm okay. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And I see that we're going to spend this entire episode on
And
point
I know
number
I got
one.
5 other things to talk about.
I love how every time we come into a podcast, we're like, do we have enough to talk about today? Oh,
Right.
we only got to the first bullet point. Okay. Um, so when I think of graduating our clients, just like you mentioned, we have clients who might start with us at a comfort level of $250 per person per day.
Yeah.
But that's still, they're still paying for the custom trip design. They're still paying our fee. They're still looking for a certain level of service. And then when they graduate, maybe they slowly move up to $500 per person per day. And maybe over a period of time, they go from honeymooners to retirees and they're up to $1,000 per person per day. Who knows? That's what graduation looks like. I don't, the clients who are looking for a done for you itinerary with some links to go book some things and some general guidance on which neighborhood to stay in, they weren't my client 8 years ago when I started my business, but some of them are still my closest friends, and they're still not my client today, and they'll probably never be my client, and we laugh about it, and
Yeah.
that's totally fine, and so I think that that's what you have to be really, really honest about,
Yeah.
is there is a certain level of graduation, of leveling up, of upselling, and people becoming a little bit more discerning with what they're looking for, but those 2 things that we've described, of a done for you itinerary at a very low cost versus a super custom itinerary at a higher fee, those aren't the same, those aren't the same client on a spectrum, those are 2 different clients.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's, I think
So,
that's why that feels distracting compared to like the copywriter and graphic
yeah.
designer example
Yeah.
we talked through.
For sure. And so if your business decides that you're going to have two distinct client segments that you serve, then just being aware of there's so much that goes into how you speak to each client segment so that they are aware of what service is for them and where they're going to find value. And it's not one blanket message that you can just throw over everything like, I do
Right.
travel. Do you want the DIY? Do you want the custom? Do you want, like, you really need to speak to the pain points and all of that of each client segment because they are different and they're looking for different
Yeah.
services. So it's
Yeah.
possible. It's possible, but it is definitely something that like requires, like we said, this audit of your brand and your ideal client, and then coming up with what's going to work best for you and your business.
Yep. Mm, I feel like I have more to say, but should we move on to aesthetics just for
Yeah.
the sake of
Yeah,
getting
and before this turns into a 5-part podcast series that we don't have slots for. Okay, so the next one is aesthetics. And I can kind of geek out on this one as well because I do believe, and this really does tie into what we talked about last week because it's super aligned with our brand, our aesthetics, and our brand. Our brand visually is going to come through our aesthetics. And so, how you visually present your business and your brand experience really needs to be focused on your ideal client. So the auditing thing in here is really looking about, hey, are you is it doing the job that it needs to do? Are you as polished as you could be? Where are you potentially leaning into your own interests versus speaking to and appealing to your ideal client? So for instance, if you've decided, hey, here's my brand and here's the ideal client, and then what you put out is just kind of like only what you like I'm dark and moody and I love the color black, yet I sell fun and sun Caribbean vacations, like those aren't aligned. And so a lot of times, again, when you're newer in business, we do the DIY approach and we kind of maybe don't take the time to think through what our aesthetics are and what our visual brand experience is putting out. But this is a great place to audit because as you move forward in your business, thinking through your visuals and thinking through what you put out on your website and on social media and all of the different places that people visually experience your brand, you want to make sure that you are thinking about the preferences of your ideal client and that it is something that is going to appeal to them. So this is a good one to audit, and also maybe to just get actual feedback from the people you're hoping to attract. Like, when you look at my website, what are the 3 words that come to mind? Like, please tell me. That's a good way to know if like what you're thinking is actually what's coming across.
well, and I would also expand the aesthetics talk and like asking people what they think and what comes to mind. Like your website is one thing, but that's what clients are going to see right at the very beginning, maybe when they're completing a form or maybe when they're deciding to reach out to you. But then also consider like the aesthetics of your itineraries. the
Oh, for
aesthetics
sure.
of your emails. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know if everyone's really thinking about aesthetics and emails being together. And I don't mean email headers.
Right,
I
right.
mean, like, are you sending gigantic emails that are not formatted in a way that anyone can digest all the information you're trying to share with them? Are you making it easy to read, to scan, to find the information they're looking for? Like, all of this really matters because I think that however information coming in, whether it's an itinerary, a website, social media, newsletter, emails, however it's coming into your clients, it's going to evoke an emotion out of them.
Mhm. Mhm.
And those aesthetics can either evoke the emotion of, oh, wow, this is so clean and crisp and organized and it's easy to read. And I know exactly, like, it's very consistent. Or some information can come in and can be like, whoa, this is scattered. This is overwhelming. Like, it's going to evoke an emotion and they're not going to tell you what emotion that is, but it's going to be there. And so I even take when this is where my brain goes when I think about the aesthetics of the client experience beyond just your website and your social media.
Also, to your point about your itineraries and your proposals, there's often a lot of chatter about how important this is. And you know what side of the spectrum I fall on. And I think you fall on the same side of the spectrum of how
Well, yeah, I
important this
tell my
is.
clients where to go to the bathroom, remember?
Yeah, exactly. But
I
just
do
like
not, people,
literally,
but that's what Brianna says.
literally not caring about how visually appealing your proposals are and your itinerary is, and thinking that that doesn't make a difference to people who are dropping
Whew,
$50,000 on a trip is
it makes a big
misaligned.
difference. Yep.
It's misaligned because in all aspects of luxury, it touches on each sense, right? And sight is a sense, is one of our
Yep.
senses. And so when you're looking at something and the photos are crap and it's not properly formatted and it doesn't visually appeal to the type of person that you are selling to, like, will you get the sale? Maybe, but you're falling short on something that really does matter in terms of this perception of your brand that is actually connected to your brand. It's not just how well you can talk about the trip or how great the service provider is on the ground. It's like when they get this piece of the client experience, which is their proposal or their itinerary, and it is not aligned in the way that you say your brand is, luxury, upscale, all of the whatever definitions or words or adjectives that you use for your brand, that is not in alignment. And so I would say that auditing that part of your client experience when it comes to aesthetics and when it comes to what's visually appealing is important. There are people that will disagree with us and that's
Well,
their
and it
opinion, but
doesn't, you
there's no data to back that up, I don't think.
I mean, we lean on the spectrum of, luxury and super detailed and all of this, but then if your business is Disney or if your business is fun and sun and the emotions that you are wanting to evoke from clients are more like fun and can't wait for the vacation and getting ready. Like, I've seen some Disney proposals that, like, I'm not even a Disney person and I was like, "Man, I'm excited for
This
this
looks
trip."
cool. Yeah, yeah,
Like, this is
yeah.
great because it just oozes the Disney magic. Like, it just oozes the
And doesn't
spirit.
it also give you kind of like credibility and also kind of just like confidence in what they've done when it's like, number one, like professional, like there has to be a level of professionalism in what we're delivering in our delivery of these things. So like that, however your brand is set up, like the fun and the kind of like, but like let it be professional, let it be also consistent. Like that's the thing as well, is like whenever
Yes.
something goes out that is from your brand, it should be a consistent experience. And so if the one time the client gets to like haphazard throw this together, oh, whatever the supplier sent will be fine because I'm busy this week, and then the next time they get like this beautifully designed proposal where they can follow easily along and look at these pictures that really elevate what it is the words are saying, like that is a very inconsistent experience. And which one is your brand? That's the kind of question that clients are going to ask, I think.
Yep. Exactly. Okay, what's next on? We've talked through service offering and aesthetics. What is
Aesthetics.
another
Okay, so this
perspective?
next one, I think we're going to definitely spend some time in our next podcast. But communication is like, let's live and die by this, because there's so
Yeah.
much of our client experience that is going to be impacted by our ability to communicate well. And so taking note of where we could be falling short, where there might be gaps, where we can improve, is going to overall affect our client experience in the biggest ways. And there are so many different points of the working with clients, or when clients are experiencing us and our brand, that communication plays a role, both
Mhm.
audibly or in written form
Yep.
or in what we say or don't say. Communication just really does, like, we can't shortchange it because it's so critical, and it's
Yes.
one of the places where there's so much continuous auditing that needs to be done. It is not like a one time, hey, we went through our email templates and our, what we've said here and we're good to go from now until eternity. It literally is something that we're auditing on a client by client basis. I get a question 2 times. I'm auditing what is in my
Once.
communication.
I get it
Clearly,
once,
this
and I'm
question
like
shouldn't have been asked more than twice.
exactly. Exactly. So I think when it comes to communication, there's what are we communicating
Yeah.
that can be audited? Then there's how are we communicating it? And you mentioned this. Are we communicating it on our website, in a welcome guide, in an email, over a discovery call, in a recorded video, all of the above? Like, how
All
are
of
we
the above.
communicating it?
Yes,
And then how often are we communicating with clients?
exactly. Yes.
Um,
The thing that I want people to really like hold on to is truly the idea that a bad client experience comes down to poor communication.
100%.
When somebody doesn't have a, like, they're not enjoying working with you, the client experience is going south, it's because expectations were misaligned, and that comes down to communication. Even when something goes wrong, how you deal with it, how you communicate with the client, really is what normally 9 times out of 10 is going to be the deciding factor on whether that gets resolved in a way that makes the client feel good and taken care of, and like, hey, this person is on my team, versus like, they don't even care and I was left out to dry and what have you. Like, that's a communication issue. So when you are having a client experience that isn't what you hope it to be, auditing your communication and where you can make changes is going to be the key to changing that around.
So if you want to think through like auditing, then like let's assume you're brand new. You can, and even if you're not brand new, you can just start from the beginning and start a list of like what are all the things that need to be communicated with clients
Hmm.
from the moment they first reach out to you until they get home.
Hmm.
And if you just start a list of like, I need to communicate how to work with me. I need to communicate what my service offerings are and whether I want, like what comes next. Do we schedule a call? How do they pay my fees? Things like this. I need to communicate what a proposal is going to look like. I need to communicate when that proposal is going to be delivered. Like just think about all the things that need to be communicated. And then alongside that, when they need to be communicated, at what point in the process, and how they're going to be communicated. And if
Yeah.
there's anything I've learned, everything needs to be communicated not just once, but probably 2 or 3 times. So whether
The
that's like
same thing.
literally the
Yes.
same thing 3 times or whether it's the same thing in 3 different ways. So often I will mention something in a discovery call and then I will mention it again in an email, in the follow-up email after our discovery call. So like same information twice, communicated in a different way.
Exactly.
Like
Like, we talk about this all the time in our shop talks. It's probably come up like 7 times so far, about clients asking for price breakdowns, right? Like, it's one of the questions that, like, oh, makes my skin crawl. Are you asking this again? And that, I think I have it 4 places now. I'm like, where else can I mention this? Where else can I, like, where else does this need to be said on the front end, so that it doesn't become a question that like irks me, because ultimately at the end of the day, it is on me to kind of like set expectations, to set boundaries, to do all of these things. And the more I can do that up front. And the more I can communicate that in different ways so that the client truly understands what it's like to work with us, what the boundaries are, what the expectations are, then we both are having a good experience. I feel
Yep.
good working with them, they feel good working with me. And so literally that's a question where I'm just like, okay, great. I'm going to have it on the, it's in my FAQs, it's discussed in the discovery call. When the email comes, it's another like PS. When they sign the contract, it's also there. At 4 times now. Like, I
Do you
really
find
need
that that's
to.
helping?
It is. I mean, like, listen, we've discussed this ad nauseum as the different reasons people ask. And so, of course,
Yeah.
sometimes it's still going to slip in, but it shouldn't be something that I was like, gosh darn it. Didn't they see that in the terms and conditions?
Sure. Yeah.
Nobody's reading the terms and conditions. That's to cover my butt, but I can't go move forward with thinking that like all the things communicated in the terms and conditions are the things that people are keeping front of mind when they're
Right.
looking at a proposal.
Well, and I think something else along these lines that are so often causing challenges for us, but then when we ask other advisors, well, like, how are you communicating this? They're like, well, I'm not. And it's like, I think we found our disconnect, and those are our boundaries.
Mhm, mhm.
Like communicate upfront on your website, in your email signature, in a welcome guide, during the discovery call, in your first emails, wherever, however often you feel is appropriate, when you work, how quickly you respond to emails, whether you are available for calls or by appointment only. Communicate these things. And because that's the only way the clients are going to know. And if those things aren't communicated in a variety of ways, then you don't really get to be upset when somebody's not following
100%.
what you
Yeah.
want them to do in terms of boundaries and communication. So I think this is why communication is so important, is because it's not just one thing. It's like, you have to think about what are you communicating and how are you communicating it? And am I communicating it in a variety of different ways throughout the process? And then also, it's just a really long list of what needs to be communicated to provide a seamless client experience. And I would say of the 5 things that we've laid out for client experience, I would say it's the number one most important one. And it is the biggest reason of why clients are either coming back to you or they're not coming back to you.
Mhm.
And so if
Yeah.
if we really, really, really want to dig into the foundation of a client experience, and if your repeat and referral business isn't where you want it to be, I'd probably start there.
Yeah.
I don't think I would start with your aesthetics,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
example.
Like
I
have
would
a have
probably
a
start with
beautiful
your
brand, but like
communication.
have people not know what the heck to expect from you is
Yep.
not the order of importance for sure. So yes, we'll definitely talk more about this one. We'll kind of just go through like really to the nitty gritty of like how often you're talking with people, how often you're checking in, where this can be automated, where you can do it more, all of those things, because I think it will give us just different things to think through and consider as clients go through our process of working with us, and where we can kind of up level this in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming on our end either. Like that's the goal, right? Not to feel like we're just like adding more to our plate. Let me just write this other email. Let me check in 5 more times. Not that, but really to have a good experience on both ends.
Well, and that takes us to our next point. And before we go on to our next point, also we have to remember that the way that we decide how to communicate and the client experience that we're building needs to be tied back to our ideal clients, right?
100%.
Like
Yeah.
a CEO of a major corporation in the United States is probably going to want to be communicated with a bit differently than a stay-at-home mom who is
Hmm.
planning a Disney vacation for her kids over spring break.
Or Grandma Thelma, who like
Yes.
has nothing else to
Yes.
do, would love to sit on the phone for 30 minutes and just kind
Uh-huh.
of like chat
Yep.
about
Love
like,
those.
yeah.
Yep. Or honeymooners who usually DIY their trips,
Yep.
who are super well traveled, and now they just have a little bit more money to spend because they're receiving gifts for their honeymoon and they're also planning a wedding. So they just want to hand this off to a professional. What we communicate, how we communicate, and how often we communicate with those 4 people is extremely different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can talk about how we communicate with Loom videos or how we send a welcome guide or, whatever it is. We can talk about what we do, but we have our ideal clients in mind when we're doing that. And
Hmm.
just because there's a lot of people who are like, we don't send Loom videos. Should I be sending Loom videos? And it's not a yes or no question. It's, well, who's your ideal client? And what do you want to communicate with that Loom video? And that may or may not be aligned with what your
Right.
clients want.
Yeah. Yeah, which is always the kind of like caveat. Anytime we answer questions like in our Facebook group or in person or anything like that, there's never a one size fits all. And so of course we always want to be open and share information and share our perspective, but without the filter of your brand and your ideal client, it really it's not a one size fits all, and it has to be taken into account of those filters. Otherwise, like, we're not all that's literally the point of not being cookie cutter.
Yep.
We're not cookie cutter. Like, there is just too much other nuance that you have to consider. That has to be a personal understanding of your business and your ideal client.
So once we work our way through the behemoth that is communication, I would argue that the next most important one to consider is systems, because going back to what you shared about consistency, if we want to create a consistent experience for clients, which helps us work toward generating a lot of repeat referral business, all of this communication, which is a lot, needs to be systematized as much as possible, both for our sanity
Hmm.
to work efficiently and also to provide that consistent experience so that when clients are coming back for their next trip and or when they're referring, that everybody's getting the same experience. And that is extremely important, which it can only happen if we have systems.
Yes, yes. So, yes, if you are taking note in your brain or on a notepad, number four is systems. This is your opportunity to audit where you can streamline, where you can automate, where things can be standardized. This happens at all points of the client experience. And a lot of us are using um, tools that will help us with this process. And one of the things to audit is how we are using those tools, if we're using them to their fullest ability, if we're really having the opportunity to like take a look at the features that they offer and see how that they can really help our business. I think I pause, I guess, a lot when people are like, "Yeah, I use X. I use." Okay, you use it, meaning like, yep, you have a login, you have a subscription, and it is part of the things that you pay for monthly. Do you use it to its fullest capabilities? And has your systems been audited to make sure that like you're getting the most out of them and they are truly helping you in the best way that they can? So auditing this part of your business is really going to make a huge difference in the time that you are saving, but also in the experience that your clients are getting on their end as well.
Yes, and I also think as you're working through the systems, this is another thing alongside communication that can always be tweaked and
Mhm.
it's always going to be refined. And so I would almost say that like setting yourself up for like a 6-month check-in on both. What are you communicating? How are you communicating it? And how are those systems being optimized and, delivered most efficiently? I almost think every 6 months you could kind of sit down for an hour and go through all of that and look for, does this still make sense? Is there a way I could make this even more seamless? And like, is it automation? Is it delegation? Should this still be happening? Do we feel like this system is helping us? Is it taking things off our plate? Is it creating a better experience for clients? And like really asking yourself those questions for each step of the way, just to continually tweak and refine. Because these are two parts. I think our tools change, but also our systems change. We get better at what we do, and so there are also the two parts of this that I think we need
Yeah,
to go back and look at on a very regular basis as well.
100%. And it is definitely, especially when you're in that like scale phase of business, where I see people holding themselves back from being able to scale at the level that they're actually ready for. Um, you're running out of like hours in your day are finite, but being able to use your systems more effectively could mean that like you have the exact same level of business and now you have 20% more time to scale that business to the next level just by using your systems efficiently. That's why like, if you I remember I remember when I had like 10 clients for the year. I don't know if that's a true number, but like, I could
Yep.
spend literally 40 hours a day
Yep.
working hard. I don't know. What was
Yep.
I averaging? $2.50 an hour, probably. But like, it felt busy, right? I don't know that there's like a stage of business that doesn't feel busy, but I
Sure.
will
Yep.
tell you when I am now at 130 clients per year and I have great systems and I'm not overworked, that like what I've put in place now has allowed me to not work more. It's just working smarter with the
Hmm.
systems that I have. I wouldn't have come close to that volume trying to
Right.
do things that like old way. And also
Right.
some of these systems weren't even available. So like, yes, yay for technology and all that good stuff. It's just getting better. But yeah, this is a huge part of being able to scale.
And to not sound like a broken record, any system or automation or delegation that we set up has to be taken back to our ideal client. Does it make sense for that ideal client? Mm. And I think that that is a filter, I will say, that even I haven't been super good at. Always like everything that I do, I think it's always like to serve me, to make my day more efficient, to optimize my time so that I can work with more clients. But I think that I could take it an extra step and kind of take it back to like, okay, here are my 3 ideal client avatars. Does this system and does this optimization, does this serve them? Like, does this make
Mhm.
sense for them? And if not, finding that happy middle ground.
Yeah. Yeah. It's super important. All right.
What's
All
the last
right.
one?
The last one, client acquisition. And so, just to make sure that we all are kind of on the same page in terms of how this has to do with client experience, I feel like we could have put this first or we could put it last, but it's going last because it really is this overarching idea of really auditing how your business and your brand is positioned to attract new clients with ease. We're always growing, we're always scaling to an extent, right? In a way that like we're always trying to kind like I don't think we're looking to just be like content and and stay stagnant, so to speak. But I think there's definitely a opportunity within the auditing of our client experience to really pay attention to like where our positioning is and if it is attracting those ideal clients that we're hoping it to, and what do we need to do or think through on our end to better position ourselves. So some of the questions that we could be asking ourselves in this part of the audit of our client experience is, are you positioned properly? And the way you kind of answer this for yourself is taking a really hard look at the number of inquiries that you get. Does this need to increase? Are you actually getting enough inquiries to really facilitate the type of business and the type of clients that you're trying to work with? What your conversion rate is. So, looking at the number of calls that you're doing, how many of those calls actually turn into clients that you want to work with? What objections that you're frequently getting or hearing from clients, whether that is on a discovery call or if you don't get into a discovery call, like why they choose not to move forward. There's a reason why people might have initially say, "Oh, is this for me?" and then say, "No, it's not." Now, if that's a no on both of your ends, good. But if it's a no, more so on the client's end, meaning like, "Oh, this is a great inquiry," and they did not move forward, you need to kind of do the deep work and the deep dive of like why, what is standing in the way of them really truly believing that this is the best way for them to plan their vacation, the best way for them to plan their travel, and taking into account what you can do in all other aspects of your client experience to really position yourself to be the best answer for them. So I think that there's a lot to be learned about our business and our brand when we audit this part of like how we're acquiring clients at what rate, and if we need to see that increase, what we can do on our end to make sure that that happens.
Amazing. So, this is a beefy list of things that we can audit through client experience. Just to kind of recap and go through these, when considering our client experience high level and really taking a holistic approach of all the areas and the facets and the components of our business that we can deep dive into to look for ways to optimize and to improve. First is looking at our service offering, then looking at our aesthetics, both at the beginning of the experience, like such as our website or social media, but then all throughout the experience of anything that clients are receiving from us. What does it look like, and what emotions are those items evoking from them? Then the two big ones, communication and systems, and then finally client acquisition. And I think having this high level filter connected to all of them of what we're offering, what it looks like, what we're communicating, the systems we're putting in place, how we're acquiring new clients. Do all of the decisions that we're making in terms of client experience tie back to our ideal client avatars that we've outlined, and
Yeah,
making sure that those connections are there?
100%. So hopefully this is a great foundation because I don't think that we build something better until we understand what we've already built, like how is it working for us? And also, how can it be improved? Those are the questions we have to ask first before we go just willy nilly changing things. Or, like we said, just taking something that somebody else is doing, like, oh, look at that, it works for them. Let me try it. And if you haven't really done this hard work of auditing what you're doing and why you're doing it, what you build is not going to be ideal for you and your business and your brand and your ideal clients. So, this audit work needs to come first.
And for everyone listening, and even for ourselves, this is like start where you are right
Mhm.
now. We don't want any of these conversations to inspire anyone to tear everything to the ground and start over, because that's absolutely not the solution. It's more, we keep saying auditing because I think having a client experience audit and really taking the time to go through that provides an opportunity for us to not only identify where there's areas for improvement, but also seeing what are we already doing pretty well. And there's
Mhm.
definitely something. There's definitely something. We all have a natural skill or a natural tendency to do one part of this really well. And I think that what we strive to push advisors to consider, especially in the advisor accelerator, it's like we can use me for an example, like systems. I've got that down on lockdown. Like I'm really good at systems. Where could I improve? Probably like communication. I think I have small areas of improvement, but I think at the very beginning, we identified that my service offering has big areas of improvement, and aesthetics is probably somewhere there in between. So a lot of us get stuck doing what we do really, really well and then just kind of calling it a day. Whereas we'd really like to push you to consider the full eagle's eye view, full circle aspect of this client experience and audit it so you can find this is what I'm doing really well. These are my areas of opportunity, and then prioritizing those areas of opportunity to improve little by little.
100%. And that's also the beauty of, I think, community is not doing it in a vacuum or not knowing the right questions to ask or not even having other people to bounce ideas off of or to say, hey, what's worked for you and why? Or kind of like, tell me more about that, which is really, I think, the benefit of having like-minded people around you that you can do this work with, that you're not always just kind of like, I don't know, just me, my brain, and kind of like a random idea. Is it a good one or not? Who knows? That's why I really like the ability to have these conversations in community as well.
So, thank you to everyone for joining us for today's client experience conversation. Next week, we will be back with episode 3 of our client experience series. And next week, we're going to dive more into communication and systems, but specifically through the lens of the phases of a trip design with a client. So, from first contact all the way through when they come home and beyond. So, we're going to kind of talk through how communication and systems relates to that. And again, as a reminder, be sure to mark your calendars for June 18th or June 19th when we'll be hosting Crafting Your Signature Client Experience, a masterclass for travel advisors. We will have more information for you soon, links to sign up, times of the masterclass, etc. So for now, mark those days in your calendar, and we'll have more to share with you soon.